One of the reasons I love emulation is that it gives us the opportunity to play many games that have been lost over time. A few weeks back, I reviewed King of the Dragons, a Capcom beat-em-up that started out on the arcade, saw an SNES port, and over time has appeared in many Capcom arcade compilations. But for every game like that, there are tens of hundreds more that have never appeared outside of their original release. And that is certainly the case for BS, The Legend of Zelda, The Third Quest. And yes, that is, or was, an actual game. In Japan, during the life of the Super Nintendo, Nintendo partnered with a company called St. Giga, and together they made the Satellaview, an add-on for the Super Famicom, which is the name of the Super Nintendo in Japan. This add-on allowed players to download games, manuals, and extras through satellite broadcasts, which is where the BS comes from, broadcast satellite. And one of the games that was offered in August of 1995 was BS Zelda no Densetsu, or BS The Legend of Zelda. It's a full SNES remake of the original Legend of Zelda with remixed dungeons and an overworld, much like some of the Master Quest versions or playthrough of the games in the series. Fans often refer to this as BS The Legend of Zelda Third Quest. What's really cool about that is obviously it's a Super Nintendo version of the original game. It plays exactly the same with SNES enhancements. So if you've played the original, you'll know exactly what you're getting. And it's interesting to see what could have been if this had been mass-produced. What's unfortunate is that it never came west, and even in Japan, it was only accessible for a limited period of time to a relatively small audience. Fortunately, it has been preserved via the internet through a ROM, so it is still playable today, but through obviously obscure methods. Most Zelda fans are likely to not even know of this game's existence, as it's never been ported. I mean, we saw Star Fox 2, which was an unfinished game, released on the Super Nintendo Classic and in the SNES section of the Nintendo Online service through the Switch. But this version of the original Legend of Zelda has just been hidden in obscurity. Link's Awakening has had 2 remakes, Ocarina of Time, Majora's Mask were both given 3DS remakes, Twilight Princess and Wind Waker were re-released on the Wii U, with Wind Waker getting a full HD remake, and this year we're seeing Skyward Sword ported to the Switch. But in all of these 35 years, the original game has never been given new life, except on the Satellaview, and otherwise has been forgotten by Nintendo. It's one of the reasons that I love emulation, having the ability to play older games that perhaps the publisher just went out of business, or maybe there was a certain version of a game that had a few extras or a few slight variations that made it more fun on a specific platform, but that version never gets released in compilations, so it's just lost over time. And with BS, The Legend of Zelda, a full SNES version obviously exists, but maybe even Nintendo has forgotten about it or just wants us to play the game in its original format. Regardless, if you have the chance, just do some Google searches and it won't be too difficult to find. This isn't even the only Zelda game released on the Satellaview. There is also BS The Legend of Zelda The Ancient Stone Tablets, which is sort of a challenge mode for A Link to the Past, and it's in the same boat. Only ever released on the Satellaview for a limited time, but as this one is just sort of a challenge mode, I can see why we've never seen it. But it's also worth checking out if you're a fan of that game or just want to complete some fun extra challenges. And this is the 35th anniversary of The Legend of Zelda, so both games are certainly worth checking out. If you like this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button or check out our podcast on iTunes or come hang out on Twitch. We'll see you next time, and as always, thanks for watching.